سلام.
درود.
درود،
درود.
خسته نباشید.
همچنین شما، همچنین
خوبی
شما.
شما؟
Nice
سلامتی؟
to nice to see you.
Same, same.
All right, so I'll let you start, but I thought we were going to do this in English, right?
من یه سلام به دوستان میکنم که بها میدم. خب خیلی
خواهش
دوست
میکنم.
آره ایرانی هستن. ما با دکتر تصمیم گرفتیم که امروز رو انگلیسی حرف بزنیم. حالا میدونم که خب ما فالوورای ایرانی زیاد داریم. I'm sorry, I'm going to explain something in Persian just very quick, then we're going to switch in English and we're going to continue our whole life in English language. تصمیم گرفتیم که با دکتر عزیز امروز رو زبان فارسی انگلیسی حرف بزنیم. حالا چون به حال من چند تا لایو فارسی قبلا گذاشته بودم، خب دوستان ایرانی آشنا شدن حالا با بحثایی که کردیم و عمق بحثای ما زیاده و برنامه ما قراره که ادامه بدیم به این صورت که بیشتر وارد جزئیاتا بشیم. ولی امروز استثنا قرار انگلیسی بریم جلو، چون دوستان انگلیسی هم میخوایم متوجه بشن که ما درباره چه موضوعی داریم صحبت میکنیم. و هفته بعد همین موقع همین تایم ما این برنامه رو با دکتر فارسی میریم جلو که ما بتونیم هر دو زبان رو حفظ بکنیم. من کامنت ها رو میبندم که دیگه بحث رو شروع کنیم. Okay, so back to our conversation. Hello doctor, how are you? How's everything?
All right, I just woke up, so I'm just starting my day with you, and I'm glad that I started this way. So it's great. It's nice to connect with you, and it's nice to get the opportunity to speak with you.
Same, that's my honor too, to meet you and continue our live discussion. I know it's very early morning there. Good morning, and let's start. So I'm gonna start with you to introduce yourself first, and your age and your background education, and just a short summary of who you are
Sure.
and what you do, so that our audience know that where do you come from and what is your background.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I was born in Iran before the revolution that occurred there, and so that will give you an idea, like a few months before the revolution. So that will give you an idea, about my age. And then at the age of 8, my family migrated to Sweden, and that's where I grew up. And I migrated to Australia after I took my bachelor's in electrical engineering. So I was trained as an electrical engineer. I moved to Australia, and I, took a master's in business administration, but then started a business in technology that ultimately led to me not being so happy with my life. I don't know if you can relate, but I was in a career that was not for me. So I decided to pursue my interests that were more in health and sport and fitness and strength. And I've always been like very interested in martial arts. I'm not obviously as good as you, because I've seen what you do and you are amazing.
You're doing great. You're doing great, doctor.
So anyway, I had the opportunity to visit Iran in 2007, and that's when I started. When I first went to the Zulkhane, and underwent training in the Iranian Olympic Academy, National Olympic Academy, to learn Varzish Pahlavani or Pahlavani arts. And then when I came back to Australia, I really aligned my life around this. I studied to become a doctor of chiropractic, and I actually graduated not too long ago, a couple of years ago. And during that time, I really tried to form kind of my ideas and my approach around sharing Varzish Pahlavani or Pahlavani arts, or Persian Yoga as I call it, with a wider audience. And as I think I mentioned in one of our chats, that my target would be primarily non-Iranians or Iranians that live in the diaspora, because I do believe that, obviously Iranians that live in Iran, they do have access to the Zulkhane, and it's a beautiful resource, and it's like a beautiful place and a wonderful, tradition to learn. And it's just there, they just have to go to the Zulkhane. But obviously the people that live outside of Iran don't have that luxury. So it's been kind of my mission to bring access for those who don't know about the tradition, but also perhaps know about it a little bit, and they don't really have access to it. So I really try to make it more accessible. That's kind of like, in summary, about my, how I ended up doing what I'm doing today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for explaining. And well, that's a beautiful mission that you're doing right now. And I want to know, like, you're saying that when you went back to Iran, you got familiar with the Zulkhane. That was the time you got familiar with that. Is that right? 2007.
Well, when I was a kid, when I was growing up in Iran, as I said, my family migrated when I was 8 years old, so I hadn't really had access to the Zulkhane. I had seen it. I have seen my uncle practice it. But I haven't really been immersed in that culture. So it was something that was in the back and the recess of my memories when I was kind of like growing up in the West. And when I was in Australia, like, I reconnected with it by seeing some videos and images from the Zulkhane, and that really, made live these memories, and so I decided to pursue it.
So how many years we can say you've been doing this?
Sorry, that was a deliberate disconnect. What did you say?
How many years it has been?
Since 2007.
2007.
Since 2007. Yeah, since 2007. Yeah, before that, in terms of athletics and sport, I was amateur level competitive martial arts, and also I used to teach boxing, and I was a fitness coach. So that's kind of like my background in sports in that sense. Before that, but the more, once from 2007 onwards, really Pahlavani or Persian yoga really took over. So I just really went, and the last like 8-10 years I've been doing it full time.
You stick to Zulkhane and Pahlavani full time.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, like,
exactly.
For me, it was love at first sight. As soon as I started, that's it. I loved it.
Okay, perfect. So now the next question I want to ask is that I know it's a question for many people for sure, and it's a very critical question, and I would say it's very, very important question, because you are using the name as a yoga. Okay, Persian is so clear. Well, people, not everybody, but the people who are educated and who has been studying history and cultural study, they know the Persian people very well and what they have done in the civilization of mankind. But beside that, you're using the word yoga, and people are going to think, okay, what's the relation of yoga? Well, we know the Persian here, and we have a yoga here, and then we know what the yoga looks like for the modern time. I mean, 21st century. People, they see, okay, there's breathing technique, there is some posture, asana, and so on and so forth. And but this one, it doesn't look like a yoga, because the Pahlavani is more very strength training concept. It uses a lot of power, and you need to be very strong to carry around those battlefield tools that they has been transformed, and we're going to talk about that. And so totally is a different game here than what we know as a yoga. What happened that you got this idea? Because you have to be very brave to do such an act, because I've been doing the same thing. I started to use the name Rostami, and I come up with the idea, and people are going to say, what is this? What's the relation of Rostam and Rostami? So you need to be very brave and confident to take such an action. But in your case, you're using the word yoga, which people, they believe it comes from India, which we're going to discuss about that now. And then you're coming and you say, hey, this is called Persian yoga. And can you tell me what happened? What was your idea? What was your concept that you used the word yoga here? And you know that this yoga for thousands of years has been promoted as an Indian, or as an Indian, I don't know, sport or something, or way of meditation or health. And what happened that you took this, you know, name and you start to come with the name of yoga rather than Pahlavani or Zurkhane?
Yeah, okay. Persian yoga, I call it my problem child, you know, because it's a double-edged sword. It's in one way it cuts very well, and in the other direction it cuts me back. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people challenge me on this, and they comment on that, of course. And you know, on both sides of the fence, you know, I got Iranians that get very offended. I got like Indians that get very offended. I got Westerners that get very offended. You know what I mean?
I know that. That's why I asked this question.
Yeah. No, but you know, there's two ways of answering this question, you know, and I think I should go with the simple, most straightforward answer first, and then I'll give you a little bit more insight into my thinking around that. So, firstly, I wasn't having great success promoting what I'm doing in a Western context here in Australia. You know, saying Zurkhane, people, they can't even pronounce it. You know,
exactly.
And Pahlavani, it goes over their head. You know, you were saying like people that they are into history, people that are into culture, they know about Persians, they will know. You know, but I'm sorry to say, majority of people are not like that. You know, and especially, I mean, as an Iranian living in Canada, I mean, Canada is obviously much more multicultural and open-minded, I suppose, in some ways. You know, but over here, it kind of flew over a lot of people's heads, you know, and it became a barrier for me to promote the art because I'm spending.
I'm going to interrupt you here, Doctor. I'm going to interrupt you here. Yeah, keep what you want to say after that, but because what you're talking about, it might get us off our topic. We come back to our path again. But you're saying that the people, they look at the Iranian in a different way, and I mean, what we want to promote as an Iranian, you say that you experience like a big thick wall. Is that what you're saying?
In a way, yeah, in a way, because I sense that for me there was a barrier just by using the name, because you know it takes attention away and it takes focus away from the art. What I'm trying to like share with someone.
Why would you think this is going on? I mean, like, why would Iranians, if they use the word of their country as Iran, and if they want to promote the arts, which they have been doing that for more than 10,000 years, because we're going to talk about that. Our plan for this program is to reveal many facts.
Yeah.
The sun would rise one day from behind the clouds, and this is our goal, because we want to express ourselves. I'm going to talk about why these issues are happening when Iranians, they've been founder of so many things in the history, and they have done a lot, and they contributed to the world for more than thousands of years. Why would Iranian today, at the age of 20-something or the last 100 years, we have to be struggling to promote on our arts? I mean, why should it be like that? Because I live outside, you live outside, we experience so many things. Why when the Indian or Japanese or Chinese, they come to the field and they call this is Kung Fu, everybody go after them and they chase them. But if an Iranian say, okay, and which is the oldest country in the history, and they were the one who started to spread most of the arts, which we're going to go forward and we're going to talk about it. And today, when they want to talk about their own heritage, they have to fill obstacles.
Yeah, look, I understand what you're saying. You know, for me, I felt that it was, in a way, it was like I mean, because there are cultural differences, and it was a barrier that I wanted to overcome. And I wanted like a simple name that gives like a context and a little bit creates an intrigue. So I guess what I was trying to say before, and I said there's two parts to my answer. The part one is that it was just like a business name. You know, I decided this is going to be the business name because I want like something easy to remember and a little bit controversial for marketing purposes. You know, so that's like part one of it. Also,
audience attention much more faster.
Exactly.
People are more familiar with yoga rather than you say Zurkhani or Pahlavani. People say, what is that? I mean, what the hell is that? And it's going to take hundreds of years to make them understand what Pahlavani is or Zurkhani is. And by that time, we are dead.
That's right.
So
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You know, so that's why I decided to go with that. But it was an evolution, you know, because in the beginning, as I said, like I was really saying Zurkhane and people couldn't even pronounce that, and then Pahlavani, and it kind of goes over people's head because you need to give a lot of background information, you know. Basically, now we talk about the second part of my answer, and that is really what is yoga, you know. And this is interesting because yoga is a word, you know. Yoga is a word that has been used as a label for these arts that I guess most people are familiar with coming from India. I mean, the word yoga, as far as I know, and I may be wrong here, was really coined or started to be used by Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras, and he did that, if I'm not mistaken, like somewhere around 250 before the Common Era, you know. So like this is, if we put it into
2,250 years ago, or 250?
No. Well, yeah, something like that. You know, 2,250 years ago, which would place it, like if you put it into context or a timeline of the Iranian history, it would be during the Arsacid or Ashkanian Parthian type of period, you know.
Who was that man who wrote this book? He was an Iranian or he was an Indian?
No, Indian. Okay, so, Patanjali. All right. So from that time onwards, like I guess
Patanjali, where he took the sources of yoga. I mean, where he took
that I don't know. Like I read the Yoga Sutras, you know. But like what I'm trying to say is that that's when the word yoga, just itself, the word started to, you know, be used for these physical practices. And I guess you said a very good word, and that's like the way of meditation practice for this Indian tradition. Okay, so yoga, then we got to look at what it means itself. Okay, in my understanding, the word yoga is a Sanskrit word that means union, to yoke, to unify, to bring together, to integrate. Okay. So we also know
that I want to open a bracket here, because you keep your words so you don't forget, because you said union, and we're going to discuss about, you know, summarize it, that where the yoga originated, because I've been doing research, and we discussed, you know, I've been doing 15 years of work and research besides doing martial arts, about the history of martial arts, history of yoga. Yoga in Persian, because people, when they, I'm going to just clarify something here. When we talk about Sanskrit, people, they think Sanskrit is an Indian language. No, that's totally wrong. It was an Iranian language. People have to know that.
It was common, yeah, it was common.
It was a language that Iranian, they use it, and the writing that they created, Iranian, they created, because the sun is the word that in English you call it the sun. The sun. And the Sasanian, I'll give a reference. One of the important reference is the words. Words are very important because it gives us a lot of information. That's why dictionaries was very important, that the British people for hundreds of years, they worked so hard to gather all the words around the world to make their own dictionary. So the word sun, we have it for the Persian kings, the Sasanians. The Sasanian Empire, it was the biggest empire at its own time. And they use the same word, sun, and all the symbol they use. In my previous post, I talk about it, that the samurai, they use the sun disc at the top of their helmets, and all the Persian Sasanian kings, they were using the sun. So we can see the word Sanskrit is a pure Iranian language. And the next thing about the yug that you talk about, doctor, we have in Farsi yek. Yek is a Persian number, means number one. And the word yoga comes from yek, yeki, yeganegi. Because Persian, they believe we have to reach to unity if we want to be in peace and no more war. It means all the religions, all the beliefs, they have to become one. And it starts from yourself. Okay, we continue.
Yeah, this is very interesting what you're saying. So definitely, but this is like how I kind of came to that, is that this started to become my understanding. So this man that is known for spreading yoga, and also that's, as you said, as a bracket, you know, it did take like from the 70s, you know, a couple of decades until like yoga became what yoga is today in the West, let's say, okay? But like going back to Persian yoga, how I formulated that was that as I'm doing the Pahlavani practice, you know, the goal, the aim, the purpose, the result of practicing this beautiful art is complete integration and unity within the human individual, from physical, mental, and spiritual, and even emotional aspects, you know. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I'm thinking, okay, if let's say, quote unquote, just yoga is, we call it Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is Indian tradition. Then this Pahlavani is a yoga, is a form of integration, is a form of meditation towards achieving unity of these different aspects of physical, mental, spiritual, and also emotional. But it's the Persian expression of that. It's the, I suppose, like more correctly to say, the Iranian expression of that. So that's kind of like what was my line of thinking to formulate this as Persian yoga. But of course, like as I teach and as I share this art, I'm very quick to remind people that, okay, this is your gateway. You came into me, to me because of Persian yoga, but it's Pahlavani, you know. And what I teach is the traditional, authentic curriculum of the Zulkhane. And perhaps I mean, most people would probably in our audience be familiar with these terms, but obviously Pahlavani is the art and Zulkhane is the place where this art is practiced. So that's kind of like how I came to Persian yoga. But what I teach and what I practice, it's Pahlavani.
Pahlavani. No, I'm completely happy that you use the word yoga here, because some of the followers, they ask me that, yeah, why Dr. Kashi was using the word yoga, and this is an Indian art. I told him, no, it's not. And you wait, and we're going to talk about it on our live.
It's an Aryan word. It's not an Indian art. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Exactly. This goes back, I mean, we know people that think the yoga, it goes back to 2,000 years ago, and it's an Indian art, which I talk about the word yog, yek, Yaganagi means one, unity, which is totally a Persian word. It's not a Western word. It's not a Japanese, Chinese word. It's the Persian word. It's very clear. Even in a Hindi language, they still say yek, do, say, char. They're counting in our language. So, but history of Iran got vanished, and unfortunately, it went under a heavy dust. And today, media, cinema, everything around the sea is going against this beautiful culture. And Iranians are defenseless. They can't even talk about it. They can't even talk about, you know, even they can't say I'm Iranian. If you say the word Iranian, people are going, oh, this guy is terrorist, this guy is extreme, this guy is like that, because of media, because of the books that they wrote it, and they try to eliminate Iranian culture, and they try to separate it, because it was a one big empire, as we all know that, and it was called Arya. And then they start to separate these lands and making it to the small pieces. And they start to say, this comes from here, that comes from there, this comes from there, to weaken this culture, to cut the hands of this culture. And what will be left? A body with no hands and no legs. That's so far all the researcher understood, not only me. I'm nobody here. There are people that they put their whole life and they done research and they understood this was the concept behind. And people that think that yoga come from 2,000 years ago, but what do you say, doctor? Do you believe it started like 2,000 years ago or somewhere around that time that this word appeared or something?
Yeah, look, okay.
Because it goes back to Pahlavani too. To me, the yoga and Pahlavani, they were the same thing. That's how I understood. But where was the timeline of this art started?
Okay. All right. To answer this question, we got to look at the shared and common history of, you know, the Indo-Iranian people. That's what they call them in academic. I prefer to refer to them as the Aryans or the Aryans, you know. So the history of the Aryans is obvious, as all history is, ultimately steeped in mythology. But there are some historical events and episodes that there are several references, and there's like they reoccur and reemerge from different sources. So you could say that's, I guess, more historical. But ultimately, I believe all history is mythology. If you go far back enough, it's mythology. But having said that, the shared history and the common history of the Aryan people, the Indo-Iranian people, it was joint. It was one people, it was one culture, as you said very correctly. They spoke Sanskrit, they wrote Sanskrit, and then, obviously there was migrations and history and time, and there was separation and, further evolution in different trajectories, But the source and the commonalities are the same. I believe that. So how far back does that go? Well, as far as I know, and as far as there's like some references around it, it goes back to at least the last ice age, and then we're talking 10 to 20,000 years ago at least.
Do we have references that these guys have been practicing?
Well, references in regards to practice, I'm going to come to that. Okay, in regards to like yoga, etc. In the references that I've come across, in terms of just yoga, okay, the references kind of goes back to this Patanjali that I mentioned, and the date I already mentioned that, that's kind of like what I found, and that's what's been attributed to him. Now, did he invent that? I don't think so. I don't think he invented
years
that.
Ago.
Something like that, right? That's like the textual references that you can say, okay, it's kind of like, I guess, like, it can be debated as everything else, but it's kind of accepted that, okay, Hatha Yoga, Indian Yoga, which was, it goes back to this Patanjali guy, and that's kind of like when he lived. But did he invent it? No. He was kind of like the person that collated or collected and kind of like re-expressed.
He's a missionary, like he was a student.
Yeah, you can say that perhaps. You know what I mean?
Something like that.
Yeah, like, so he collected and he cataloged this, and he wrote the Yoga Sutras, and he passed it on. But he obviously got it from a tradition, okay? And this is interesting to look at, because we're going to look at what tradition Patanjali comes from. And that, in my understanding, is the Brahmanic tradition of the Aryan nations, or the Aryan culture.
Because Brahmani was one of the Iranian races, so far I understood.
Exactly. I was going to get into that, and that is that if you want to understand like these differences, you got to really understand the Aryan culture. And Aryan, Iranian, Indo-Iranian is all the same to me. Okay, so Aryan culture, you look at how they lived in their society. They had the three-caste system. It was the I guess the spiritual or religious caste, which they were.
The spiritual,
and then the Vaishyas, which was the merchants and the farmers and all this, So Patanjali grew out of this Brahmanic, or the more like religious caste of the culture, and that is where I see the root and the source of Hatha or Indian yoga, whereas Pahlavani, has been the warrior caste. It's the tradition of the warrior society of the Aryan nations, and that, I think, is much older. I mean, then we can talk about references, and I don't want to get academic. I think it's a little bit boring, but definitely it's important to know about the references and where it all started. But yes, Pahlavani is the tradition of the warrior class of the Aryan societies or the Aryan nations. This is what I think. And how far back does the history of that go? We definitely have written textual sources that it goes back to at least the Arsacid or the Ashkanian time period, but by the tradition of the Iranians, which was never written, it was an oral tradition. By the oral tradition, it stretched back much further than that, at least 10,000 years ago. This is what I've come across.
Yeah, because this is very important. Also, we answer to this question, because many historians that or the people who have done research, you know, they try to shorten the history of Iran. This is very important that everyone knows about this. They want to say that the Pahlavani started 2,000 years ago, which based on the research I have done, I'll do the research based on the people who have done research. So I have to see what they have said. I cannot make up something. I can't say, you know, because I'm Iranian, this goes back to 100,000 years ago. I have to have references when I talk about it. Everyone knows about it. So I go and read what people they've been, you know, try to understand about this art. But today they all talk about, oh, Sasanian, Achaemenid Empire, Hakhamanesh, you know, just which is 2,500 years. Is nothing in the history of Iran. 2,500 years ago, all the countries around us, they've been developed from Greek to Roman to Egypt to India to China and other places. So it's not a very old era for Iran. And everyone, they want to stick to these two dynasties, Sasanian, Ashkanian, Parthian, or Achaemenian. But the question comes that nobody in such a short era can reach to highest technology and to the highest form of knowledge in 2000 something. So that means there is a history of at least 20,000 years behind that to reach to that, you know, wisdom. It can be just like this in 500 years. Let's say we talk about 3,000 years, and then 500 years after that, 2,500 years ago, then these guys, they are like super intelligent and do so many cool stuff that many people don't know. I've seen that there is a track that it goes back to 10,000 years minimum, and based on the seals, I found seals that they keep it in the American Museum, some of them in British Museum, some of them in French Museum, that there are seals that is showing that the Persian, 12,000 years ago at least, in the boat, they had a navy system, that they only talk about it in the Greek books, in the Western book, that these boats or the navy started 2,500 years ago. It's not true. That at least goes back to 10,000 years ago, that the Persian kings, they had the big navies. And inside the navy, they are doing acting, singing. They have an instrument they're playing. And they're training martial arts. So unfortunately, they never talk about these things. You know, the books that they write, they keep saying 2,000, 2,500, 2,000, 2,500. Cyrus the Great, you know. They try to narrow, direct your mind that you don't go more.
No, I got to comment on that. I got to comment on that. And my comment is that because like the Western, I guess like quote unquote Western, I mean, I'm not passing a value judgment, but just like Western history, I mean, they say that themselves. It started with the Greeks. And when did the Greeks start? It started like 2,500 or whatever, 3,000 years ago.
Further because the Greek would manage it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's their zero. That's when they started. So they look at that and forward. You know, their perspective reaches only to that. In my kind of like experience is that. But and then obviously you know, I mean, I grew up in the West and I love a lot of Western things, you know, and I live in a Western culture. So again, it's not a judgment thing, but this is just an observation that, you know, that's kind of like. They look at the textual sources and their civilization and everything like this. They started with the Greeks, and I love Greek tradition and wisdom. There's nothing to say about that in a negative context. But for them, that's when it starts, you know. And so they see from then on forward, and any texts or sources that they primarily go to is what was written by quote unquote the enemy of the Persians or Iranians, you know. So it's like their story, you know. So there's that aspect of it. But there's an important aspect that we got to talk about that we haven't come to yet. It's the meaning of Pahlavani. Because this gives clues to the really ancient tradition that you are referring to, you know. So just to elaborate on that a little bit, Pahlavani comes from the root word Pahlavan, and the suffix I at the end, Pahlavani, makes it like the way of the Pahlavan. So what is this Pahlavan? Pahlavan was this title that they gave to accomplished martial artists and warriors, basically. That means essentially, as you termed it as well in your texts, is heroism, and how to be a accomplished full hero, I would say.
Superman, the Superman now Hollywood tries.
In a way, yeah. Like, you know, I mean, in our tradition, we say Javan Mard, yeah? So what's this like, Javan Mard mean? It means like the complete youthful man, like the perfect man, as you say, the Superman.
Yeah, mental perfection and physical
And
perfection.
Nietzsche, like Friedrich Nietzsche, like he took this kind of concept and coined the term Übermensch, you know, the Superman, as you,
Superman, yeah.
or the Overman, you know what I mean?
You know, the Sur, actually, if you take the Surman, it was Sur. The root of the word Superman come from Sur. And Sur Atur was one of the Iranian strong men in the history. And then they use the same word again, the Surman or the Turman. So that's again the same concept, that because, you know, they've been the strongest warriors and they knew all the knowledges, and they knew everything. They knew from medicine, they knew from farming, astrology, and they were really in the, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we're going like really back into the history, but then we'll come, I guess, like more to a modern context about like what that means today. But so this Pahlavani, coming from the word Pahlavan meaning the knight, champion, hero, you know, paladin, in perhaps in English a paladin, you know, and this is the kind of like the combination of all these terms makes it into a label. The label is Pahlavan. The practice is Pahlavani, how to become a Pahlavan, okay? And this is important because this heroism or the hero worship or becoming like this overman, Superman kind of thing was a tradition that was, we know that Aryans, that's the warrior castes of the Aryans, that's how they lived in their societies. I mean, it was the earliest historical archaeological evidence of the chariot, the earliest historical like evidence of like this group of people that are also mentioned in Hindu texts, you know, the Pahlavans. You know, this tradition is an Aryan tradition, and it is in the ancient Gatha sources, in the Gatha language, in the Sanskrit language, and then later in the Pahlavi language. You know, there are sources that are referring to these people that they lived their life like that, and they kind of like followed this tradition. So this gives us clues to how old this warrior tradition is. You know, and as I said, there is, you know, references here and there about this heroism culture and these Pahlavans that raided and fought battles and were on chariots, and that's how they kind of like fought their warfare. That's like much older than the 2,500 years.
Exactly, because we know in the Rig Veda that I think Rig Veda goes to 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, right? And that's an ancient Persian book, we can say. That
I would rather say Aryan, you know, because it's the Aryans, the Indo-Iranians, like there's kind of like this common thing for them, this common culture.
Because you know that the word Arya, then it changed into Iran, is the same thing. Arya, Irn,
yeah,
which I'm gonna talk about one day where the word come from. But anyway, Iran and Arya is the same word. So that the they mention it. It's very clear. They talk about everything about what the Iranian and Aryan were doing, which is again the same words. And then I discovered that even it goes more back behind the Rig Veda. It goes back to the history of Gilgamesh. And this goes back up to 6,000 years ago. And I think the people who studied, they know the story of Gilgamesh. And in the Gilgamesh is talking about that this legend from the Mesopotamia, he's going to go to a city, which is called again, Iran, Arata, or Irin, which was the old name of Iran. Because many people that say that Iran word came at the time of Sasanian. Like Sasanian, they start to use the word Iran Shah, and that's the new name. It's not that old. But we have so many references. It's just a matter of who's going to go after it in the study to find out. That in that Gilgamesh story, this legend going to go to Arata, which is called Iran, and to look for an immortal medicine. If he drinks this medicine, Gilgamesh is going to live forever and is going to become immortal. It's probably very symbolic here, or we don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they had a medicine that, you know, if you would drink, you could live, because it's still human nature.
No, there is a medicine, and it's called Pahlavani. It's the path of the immortals. It's the way of the immortals.
Because then the word, again, we hear it come back as a Persian immortals, Javidan, Javid.
Yes, exactly.
The word, then it goes to India and become The Yoga are using that, because I want to give reference that where the Yoga can come from. That they start to use the first alphabet of Immortal, which were the Amurai people. I mentioned it in Farsi in my last conversation, but it was in Farsi people that didn't understood that it was the word Amurai, that there were another Iranian people that live in Iran. Then they moved years, and then they went to Japan. It becomes Samurai. So, you see, and then they call Japan the land of sun. But we know Iran is known as the land of sun for a long time. The lion and the sun was the symbol of this country for a long time. So we know that the history of Pahlavanism and heroism in Iran, at least it passed 10,000 years, with all the quick references I gave. But one day we're going to go through details if people they still doubt it. Or the people who think they know more than us, we would be happy to have them in our channel, and we go through each of, you know, our conversation. Anyway, beautiful. Okay, so now let's go back to Pahlavani. We talk about the history of Pahlavanism, and we know, okay, with a short, quick summary of the references we share, we know how it started. But we go back to their ideology behind it. What these guys believe in? What was their moral codes? Why it was so important for the Iranian to teach to the children from age of 4 to 5 years, they have to start to train in the Pahlavani. It was like an important task for the fathers. Like now we see today that Western culture, we see now at this era, they send the kids to karate class, to kung fu class, or, you know, any kind of martial arts class, because they believe like, if I put my kid into these classes, they're going to learn discipline. They're going to gain confidence. The parents who are healthy and smart, that's what they do to the kids, which we seeing it today is happening. But Iranians, they knew that thousand years ago that this is the only way I can, you know, I can secure my children if I put them in these classes. So what they've been doing there, what was the beliefs, what they've been trying to do there, that, you know, that it was so important to keep your child in those classes and making sure they're going to get trained well.
Yeah, okay, look, this is very interesting, and I have like a special love for this particular topic, but and it makes it a little bit difficult where to start talking about it, but just as a byway, yes, you're right, from a very early age, and this was so important, in fact, that at one stage at the Papakan, like all men and all children to be trained in the Pahlavani tradition. Okay, and this was like a decree throughout all the Iranian lands that he issued, that all the children have to be trained into this tradition. Now, I have read that for, you know, in very ancient times, this is before the time of universities, even this is before the time of schools, etc. You know, you know, this is, we're talking more than 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. You know, much in very early history, the tradition of the Aryans was that they believed that their children, that this was the Persian education, yeah, the Iranian education for the children, was to teach their children how to ride a horse, how to shoot a bow, how to be able to handle weapons, wrestle, and to tell the truth.
Yeah, and also close combat.
Yeah, of course, that's wrestling, kushti, that's like close combat. So how to ride a horse, how to handle the bow and
we know it
weapon.
As 3 things. چگونه راست برونی، راست بگویید، راست تیر بیاندازید. So to shoot the arrow,
that's it. That's exactly what I want to say.
Ride the horse
that's
in
exactly
the way and tell the truth.
Exactly, and to tell the truth. These aspects were like the basis and the foundation for the education that they pursued. Okay, so now if we talk about the moral code, or and you mentioned, like, I mean, you're a very interesting man, and you mentioned a couple of very interesting points there about the land of the sun and the lion and the sun. And just as a parenthesis, or like a tangent, you also refer to the samurai and the Japanese culture. It's very interesting to me, in fact, and I'm not talking about very ancient history. I'm talking about more recent history, which was like the Edo period of Japan, and you have this samurai tradition. They actually, like, it's very fascinating. They actually had, how they shaved their head?
Yes.
Simultaneously, exactly. In Iran, they did that too. I mean, the Pahlavans, you see photos. Yeah, they shaved this part of the head,
and at the time of Shah, when Behruz Vasuq was playing Dashakol, it was one of the very famous Persian movie that they tried to portray the Pahlavanism and moral code of Pahlavan in that movie, which was 50 years ago, before revolution. And we see that they cut their heads exactly in the round circle, the same way the Japanese are doing that. But well, we were older than them. So, and then they have the same costume.
Yeah, and it's the same warrior tradition in a way. You know what I mean? I mean, this, and I often compared and contrasted what a Pahlavan is, and I compare them to a samurai, whereas the difference being the samurai serves a master, a Pahlavan serves the land and the people of the land. So that was just like a little bit of a side story about what you said in regards to the samurai and the land of the sun, but going back to the land of the sun.
Because there is a very, very strong connection I discovered between the samurais and the Iranian. Look at this. We all know this is the Achaemenid soldier, the Persian immortal. Look at the costume. This is before the samurai appear, because we know the history of samurai is 1,000 years. When I start to talk about that the samurai was influenced by Iranian and all the martial arts or whatever culture they're following is the Aryan culture, people that went against me. They said, no, it's not true. I said, Aikido, Karate, Jiu-Jitsu, all of them has been influenced by Pahlavani. And many Iranians, they went against me. They said, no, this is nonsense. We don't have a reference. I said, okay, we're going to look at here. This is the same dress that the samurai start to wear 1,500 years after the Achaemenian, the Hachomanish. And they call it Hagama. And the word even Hagama, they don't have a Che. The Che.
Yeah.
Languages, they don't have a Che. So they couldn't say Hachamanesh, which is the name of the dynasty of Persian. So they start to use the words of Hagama as their costume name. So we have so many things. I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of pictures, a lot of things that I put them aside. So I said, okay, at the right time, I'm going to reveal all of them. And today we're going to go through a little bit of them. And that's why I see big connection between the Japan and Iran. And this is one example.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. In fact, one of my students, I mean, now we're kind of going off topic, but I'll come back to it. I'll circle back to it, like the circle of the sun, but I'll come back to it to talk about the sun. But one of my students is an Aikido practitioner, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but I have posted about it, that how he believed also that their tradition originally comes from Iran, and his master, who was a Japanese master, his name is like, if you go to my Instagram page, and you have to probably go down a few, because that was like a few years ago, there is like a post about that I've done, and I talk about that connection. But anyway, circling back into the land of the sun, and you mentioned a couple of interesting things that I didn't know about before, so that was very cool. But that is very, 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 to me, significant, the land of the sun, because sun being Mitra, and the tradition of Mitra, and the connection of Mitra to the tradition of warriors, and just basically the concept or the personification of.
Can we call, I have a question here. Can we call the sun Arya, not Mitra, please? Because last time I referred to that Mitra is a woman name, and the woman symbol was moon, not the sun. But this is another topic. One day we're going to go through that, because somewhere along the history of Iran, so many things has been changed. And,
yeah, I disagree with you there. I disagree with you there because I mean, it's a very deep topic, and I would love to talk about that, but yes, you are right in the sense that Mitra is a female name. That's, I mean, it's used for females in modern context in Iran. It's the name of females, but why that is and how it came about that Mitra is kind of like androgynous at some stage, and he's got this counterpart of the female energy, or kind of like that goddess versus the god, and how the unification of that is the sign of the circle, and then you get this yin and yang thing from developing from that. I think that's a very interesting topic and concept in itself. But to kind of like use common or like the common nomenclature, the common names around this, it is like mehr parasti, mehr, that's not Mitra, that's mehr, so that's not a female name, that's like that's a name, mehr,
but where
mehr
the
parasti.
name comes from, I mean, it's referring to what? Because based on
Mitra. Mitra,
with the historians,
and Mitra was the word for it used in the Aryan language, and it's
woman.
again like,
she was a
excuse
goddess.
me?
She was a goddess, not a god.
Well,
Not the man.
this is I think like where we diverge in our understanding of it, because as far as I understand it, as far as I know, is that Mitra was symbol of Mitra is the sun. The symbol of Mitra is the sun. Mitra is not the sun. The symbol of Mitra is the sun, which is one of his symbols. Another of his symbols is this Javan Mard, or this young man that we talk about, that gives like the, and there is like, again and again, many references, art, sculptures, etc., that shows this young man wearing the Phrygian cap that is slaying the bull. And again, this has this astrological, occult type of like significance and meaning
That's the
to it.
thing. Many people, they believe that person that you talk about, the Mer and the Mitra, because it's very important we differentiate these two things, because it's a big confusion happened here. Based on the things we track from Anahita, Nana, Ana, all these names, and she has thousands of names, and she's been worshipped in thousands of culture, and just her name is changing. And then her name was Mitra, and her symbol was moon. And we know the man's symbol, which was Rostam. He has different names, like the Sanskrit, that the symbol of Chalipia, or the cross, that was the symbol of the sun, and the name was Arya. And it was two different things, but somewhere it changes, and it starts to become like the woman come and take the sun power, and she start to be symbolized with the sun instead of the moon. And the yin and yang start to changes. It's not anymore together, but it's like she possesses the both, like the man energy and the female energy as a woman thing. But you're saying no, it's not like that. She's referred, I don't know, because you have to be referred as a she or he, because we know the Mitra is a she here. And I don't know, that you want to say that this is not related to her, it's related to something else?
No, I'm not really saying that. I think they're related together, and they have always been interdependent, and interconnected, because, okay, and I'm not an expert on this. This is just like a hobby and passion of mine. Like I like to learn about that, but I can't, like, I think there are much greater minds and better experts to be, talking about this. I learned a lot from Dr. Jason Reza Georgiani. Like, he understands the topic very well, I think. So that's a reference that I highly recommend for yourself and others who are listening to look up. Dr. Jason Reza Georgiani.
Yeah, I know him. I look at his thing. He just talk about the similar. Yeah.
You know, so, but in my understanding, what I understood from my research into this, again, just from my passion into it, because it's, I think, closely related to the Pahlavani arts, and it's the kind of foundation for the moral code and philosophical ethos and spiritual practices of the arts, you know, is this quote unquote, just for the you know, use of the word, Mitraism. I don't believe in isms, and I don't think that it's like a thing, Mitraism, but just like in Western literature and I guess thing, they refer to it as the Mitraic mysteries or Mitraism. So just because we speak in English, I think I'm just going to use that term. And because of the limitation of the English language, one of them being that you gotta refer to the third person by gender, saying he or she, whereas in Persian we don't do that. Like we have a genderless.
It was unity. Yeah, it was just one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you refer to the third person as who, meaning like, you know, he or she, like, you know, the gender is not specified. So, yeah. And that's how Mitra is referred to as. I mean, in English language, because of the limitation, we say he, but it might as well be she, because it is this container of this energy that is, there is God energy, there is goddess energy, there is masculine and feminine involved in
but
that. And
I know based on that, this was called.
This was called what?
Arya-Meh.
Arya-Meh. Yes.
Based on the research I found that out, the Mitra was a feminine energy, and the Arya was the sun, was the male energy. And then the symbol, as we see in China, yin and yang. Do you know what symbol is that? Like, what is symbolizing?
Yeah, the fire and water. Yeah.
No, it's a Persian paisley. It's the two Persian.
Oh yeah,
paisley.
Yeah. I mean, I have it on my Meel. Yeah. On the photo that you.
It's a two Persian paisley that they go together.
Yeah.
And people, they never pay attention to that. And one is the dark, one is the light. So one is talking about the female energy, introvert, passiveness, which is Mitra. And the other one is the Arya, the sun, exposure, strength, and extrovert. So we talk about that these two energy, if they get separated, well, we have a problem then. So you have to be somehow harmonized. That's what the Iranian believe. So they become the unity. We have the dualistic here, and we have the oneism here. And then, based on what I see, the Pahlavani does not refer to Mitra, because this Mitra is a very passive and you know, introvert type. But Pahlavani is very strong and extrovert like a sun, and they are very, you know, macho people. So that's why I said the word Arya makes sense to be used for that. But together, if you want to use as a one, maybe we can call it Arya-Meh, you know, like that's what.
I like it. I like that. Arya-Meh, I like that. I think
someone used the same thing as that.
No, I look, I like that. Okay, I disagree with some of the things you said, but I like what you said in regards to the combined and the yin and yang and the paisley signs. I have that painted on my Meel, and that's the purpose of it. And I said, you know, fire and water, again, this is the physical manifestation of the female masculine energy. So the sun and the moon, you know, fire and water, moon being the obviously like the tide and the water, and Anahita being the water goddess, like, you know what I mean? So again, like this is kind of like going in a different direction, but it's also important to mention Anahita, and it's also important to mention the moon and the goddess energy and the water energy vis-a-vis or versus Mitra or Meh, who I see is the more masculine energy, is the symbol of the sun, and you know, the combination of them, we call it, perhaps call it Arya-Meh, which I think there is a disconnect in the middle there, but for the simplicity's sake and purposes, let's just use that. Okay, so then you're saying, okay, the culture, the moral code and ethics of, they don't talk about Mitra, you know, in Pahlavani, you know, they kind of do, because, you know, they are talking about Javan Mardi, you know, and this is like in a single word, or actually two words, but it's like in single concept label. It is the aspiration, or I think the end game or end goal of the Pahlavani practice is to attain this state of Javan Mardi. You know, this is what you know, the aspiration is. You know, and what is this Javan man? Yeah, I already touched about that literally it means a young man, you know. And then what is the attributes of this young man? You know, because this art being more masculine and this art being more.
Yeah, because that's why I said I don't see any connection to Mitra. That's what my you know, my statement.
No, I understand the difference.
Because you said also, you mentioned that in one of your posts, and I also know that female was not allowed to train in this sport, like many other things that Japanese they do that. Like in kabuki, in Japanese theater, there is no female actress; it's all male actors. We know in the Greek that when they were doing the acting, again, like there was a person, I forgot his name, that was doing. He was a popular actor at that time, 2,500 years ago. He played the role of a woman. So again, the woman was not allowed to participate. So that was the reason I said how there is a connection between that when we know it's a very masculine sport. And as you also
this is very interesting though, and this is like very subtle in a way. You know, this is very subtle because yes, it is very outward in external kind of shape, very masculine. You know, but
because
inwardly,
they have to lift the heaviest stuff, and they have to lift like 200-kilogram mace or swords like 30-40 kilograms.
Of course, ridiculous stuff. I know.
No normal person could ever do that. So
yeah, and that's why they're the Pahlavani, you know. But here's the interesting thing, and we already referred to the Paisley sign and how they're both together. And again, like I have it painted on my Meel, and I mean I understand this. Is the unification, and we've talked about this, the unification and the integration. You know, I personally, I believe you cannot be a complete whole man without acknowledging the feminine energy. You know, without imbibing, even accepting. You know, those, I guess, quote unquote, feminine qualities, you know. So goddess worship was big. And again, this goes back
whoever
into.
Tried to deny that, they got destroyed in the end. I mean, this is very clear.
Yeah, well, I mean,
whoever tried to deny the masculine power or energy, she got destroyed. Or he, as a man, who denied the woman energy in himself, he got destroyed in the end. I mean, this is pure, no doubt.
Because you can't be whole without them.
That's it. And
yeah, you can't be whole.
You can't be whole. And the reason of martials and Pahlavani is to maintain this two energy. Because we know in the martial art, you can't always advance. You have to retreat sometimes. And you can't always retreat. This is what I teach in my system. You have to advance. So it's the duality of in and out.
Fire and water.
Fire and water, partying, hit and run. You don't hit and stay.
Yeah.
That's why the partisans get popular, because of the tactic they use. They said, we hit and we run. So we don't stay. So that was exactly the idea of this, you know, left and right, hot, or sun and moon. So where do you have to be sun sometimes? Where you have to be a moon sometimes? And I know.
Yeah, and we agree on that. I think. Yeah. I understand you. I understand you, and I agree with you on that. You know, so we understand that. You know, and I'm just like trying to go back to, okay, this Pahlavani that is very masculine is also feminine, because to master the Pahlavani arts, you know, there's 7 arts, 7 physical arts in Pahlavani. The last art is the art of the zarb and the zang, and to master the mastery of the poetry, you know. And this is like, you know, it's art, like it's very, in a way, soft, you know, it's very feminine in a way, you know what I mean? So it is like, yeah, you have all these like very extremely challenging physical practices, but it culminates in something very soft as music and dance and poetry, you know. So again, it's not this hyper masculine Marvel universe captain whatever type of energy, but it is this warrior poet that is graceful and fluid like water, and includes this like in a way like this female energy. And as a point of interest in, again, like the Mitraic mysteries, this is very off topic in a way, but there are 7 spiritual practices, you know, where one stage in your ascension, in your evolution, or an evolution towards enlightenment, is to cultivate the female energy, you know. So also we do know that traditionally, as we said, like women were allowed to practice in the Zurkhane. Yes, this is true, you know, but it's not true that women were not allowed to be Pahlavans or practice Pahlavani. This is not true, that they were not allowed to practice Pahlavani. They were not allowed to enter the Zurkhane, yes, but Zurkhane only came about around the time or after the time of the Mongol invasion of Iran, which by that time already Iran had been Islamized, and you know, they followed this very patriarchal tradition of the Semitic or Abrahamic cultures and religions, you know. Whereas, again, you go back into the prehistory of Iran, in that region of Middle East, which is today, I guess, in a way synonymous with male, you know, how do I say this without being like too politically incorrect? But against like a little bit more masculine dominated, male dominated cultures of what we conceive today of Middle Eastern cultures in general, was Iran in its prehistory was a matriarchal society. And we see that in the societies of the Saka or the Scythians and Parthians, who were in a way the originators of the Pahlavani tradition. You know, because the Persians, the Medians, they were geographically much closer to the Semitic tribes and people of Babylonia and Assyria, you know, and so their interactions with the more patriarchal societies, I mean, even those societies, if you go back far enough into their history, you'll find that they had goddess worship, and it was more matriarchal in their structure. But the more eastern parts of Iran, where the Saka and the Parthians and the Alans,
mostly man worshipper, yeah.
The Masagetai, all these different Aryan tribes, you know, they were more matriarchal in their society, you know. So you were right, like whoever like suppresses the masculine will eventually fall, and vice versa. So obviously there has to be a happy integration and medium there, which is again the symbol of the paisley and the fire and water.
Because you are created from, you're not created from two women. Nobody's created from two men. This is what, unfortunately, today they're going to do that. You know, they want to change the rules of everything. But as a human being, you come from a man, you come from a woman. So you can't be born without these two creators. And how can you be a child of two creators to say, I don't want this, I want this, or you say, I don't want this and I want this? So the idea comes only the way you can live better and be more in the peaceful condition is to accept both of them and to
integrate those energies inside you. Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. And unfortunately, based whatever wars I'm tracking and I'm seeing the history, it's just because when the man or the woman was created, try to deny one of this. And psychologically, I can see them that they're off the map. So, yeah, I mean, let's back to Pahlavani moral code. I found something here. I found out that the Bushido, the way of the samurai, is a very little, the small sense of the Pahlavanism. And as we talk about all the history and, you know, this and that, we know that how Pahlavan is old, and the samurai history is 1,000 years. But they're using the 8 codes as the Bushido codes. Based on the research I've done, and I figure out that these codes were, again, borrowed and originated from the Pahlavan people. And these Pahlavan they had a very complicated philosophical system that not every people, they can understand them. That's why we realized, based on all the study I've done, 99% of the Pahlavani, they were the great poets. Poems we call it, or poets we call it? Shair. They call it English poets.
Poets.
They were great poets. And I give a reference that it brings me to idea of the Last Samurai movie, which I have to share something for the audience here.
You mean Tom Cruise? I'm joking.
Yeah. That in the Last Samurai movie, you see that Katsumoto with Tom Cruise in the movie, and he's talking about that he couldn't finish his poems. That is giving a reference that the Amorai, which again goes back to ancient Iran, that these are the people who were warrior, and as you said, who were very sensitive at the same time. At the same time, they look very aggressive, very strong, and very brutal. But the other side, we see the feminine energy in them, that they were such a deep thinker, and they were so sensitive, and they had a little heart like a bird heart. And they were expressing the other side of themselves through artistic approach, music, poetry, but mostly poetry. So that's what I discovered too. And what do you know about the moral code? I mean, like, what did you understand about the moral code of Pahlavani? That because I know there are many martial artists and champions around the world, and I always said that knowing some punching or kicking, it doesn't make you a great martial artist or warrior. And I mentioned many times in my channel to my students, don't think if you learn my combat techniques and whatsoever, or you go to higher rank, you are like something extraordinary. If you don't have the moral codes, if you don't have this Pahlavanism mannerism, you never become a warrior, or you never become the Rostam. And that's the same thing that the samurai, they start to practice for hundreds of years. And the Pahlavan, they start to do that for thousands of years. And most of our kings.
Yes,
so
yes.
Let's go to this morality of this Pahlavanism, that because I would say this is very important that people, they know that it's not all about physical, and it's above which is
yes, of course. And yes, of course. And I think it would be a good topic to kind of like conclude this conversation for today. But obviously, it's a very large topic. It's spanning many thousands of years. And I love talking to you, and I could talk to you forever about this. But we kind of like keep it concise. I think it's a good topic to end on. But just before I comment on my understanding about the moral code and the, I guess, the ethical principles of Pahlavani, again, like we were making some references to different cultures and their traditions, and the Japanese and the Hindu, and I ultimately see the Indo-Iranian tradition as a singular unit, but and the Greeks and whatever, I just want to make a comment that just the same way you can have plants evolve independently from each other, or animals evolve independently from each other in different geographical regions. For example, I'm in Australia. Like, there's only, this type of kangaroos only exist type of here. You know what I mean? So they evolved separately, I guess, compared to other animals in elsewhere. Similarly, I believe that human beings are capable of independent thought. Obviously, there's always influence, and they could have risen and given rise to these schools of thoughts and whatever philosophies and traditions independent of each other, without even knowing of each other. Is that probable? Is that possible? Yes. Is that probable? Unlikely, because I believe ultimately human beings seek interaction, and through their interactions they get influence each other. And we are, I guess what I'm understanding is both of us, we are seeing that, or we are expressing or exposing how that influence, the Persian influence, or the Aryan or the Iranian influence that has been, as you said, dismembered.
How can make it possible, Kashi, that I understand that you're saying that, let's say when we talk about the Japanese here, you want to say they independently got to some conclusion somewhere around that far, and we here understand to another conclusion, some from far from each other, because of our intellectuality. But how does it make a sense that if this is possible, if what you're saying, because I have to disagree with you, because I don't believe that someone far away from somewhere can reach to the same conclusion, and that far that we can see that that their country is being calling the land of sun, and the symbol of the flag is the sun, and all the words they use, like kako, kashi, kato, kako, ako, akur, ar, all Persian words from the ancient Iranian kings. And then we see, like, even the cars, the brand cars they're using, Mazda, Nissan, Subaru, all of them again Persian names. make a sense. Like one thing we can reach to
Yeah.
conclusion, two things, three things, four things independently. But how come like thousands of things I see here?
No, I look, as I said to you,
from the names, from the symbols, from the
yeah. Yeah, look, I said, I said it's possible. I mean, anything is possible, but is it probable? I don't think it's probable. I think that the influence and that's what we're talking about. And I agree with you. You know, we are highlighting the influence of the Aryans, you know, into these various cultures. And again, like it's a no-brainer, because like if you look at the interaction, the Silk Road between the East and the West, from Japan to Greece, you know, Iran is in the middle. It passed through Iran. Like it's impossible. Like you conducting trade.
And
you
most
know,
interestingly, when I look at the Museum of Japan, whatever I found out is the Sasanian heritage there in their own museum. Whatever they have is the plate from the Sasanian kings, the sword from the Sasanian kings in Japanese museum.
Yeah. I mean, so we're on the same page here. But I just wanted to highlight that. I mean, we don't have the answers. Like, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Is it probable? No, I don't think it's probable. You know, I think that more probable is the influence came from there, because this tradition is so old and so ancient, as we have been discussing. Okay, but to kind of like go back into this kind of like ethical, moral, and spiritual aspects, I think it can be summarized in this term that I've used before, and it's like the basic principle of Pahlavani, and that's Javan Mardi. You know, now we're going to talk about what this Javan Mardi really means, okay? And
I want to give you like maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, you take a rest, or you want to drink a water or something, because this is a final topic, as you said. I'll give you some rest.
No, I'm good. Let's just like, let's conclude, because we need to conclude this.
Because you're talking, as I said, we're gonna continue our conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
next
to
week. We're
talking.
gonna do Farsi, so the Iranian knows what we discuss about. The next week after that, then we're gonna go episode by episode in different topics, so we can reveal our knowledge and whatever we gather. Because you know, it takes a lot of years to research, to study, to work. And it's not that easy, and we are just sharing for you guys. You know, you have to go and study thousands of books. And you know, I started to travel when I was 16 years old. So people who know about me, they know it. I was in Southeast Asia studying all type of culture, from Japanese, Chinese, Indian, Malaysian. And when you said Pahlavani, it was so interesting. When I was in the school in Malaysia, my teacher, when she was talking, because I study acting, she was talking about that word which was called Pahlavan, and I said, what? Pahlavani? I said, can you repeat it, ma'am? She said, Pahlavani. I said, how do you know this word? She said, we call our hero Pahlavani. So far away, 8,000 to 9,000 miles with a flight, that it takes like almost 10 hours with the airplane. People somewhere in Malaysia are using the word Pahlavani for the name of the hero, which we talk about.
I mean, Malaysia is like very far away. They do that in India, they do that in Turkey, they do that in all the major regions around Iran. And this is another like a very fascinating point to talk about, I think, is that this Pahlavani, which also exists in the Indian tradition, although today it's very different, but at one point in time it was the same, as I said, because they were Aryan people, you know. And this Indian Pahlavani expression of it, there is, I mean, I don't know like what you think about this, but what I have read, that, you know, these Indians like Hindu Indians that traveled from India to spread one of the most ancient martial arts, the Kerala. I can't pronounce it well. Kerala Katai or something like this. That they traveled, these Indian monks, that they traveled from India to China and to Japan, that gave rise to all these like martial arts. There's this theory as well.
Here, because that was something I was supposed to talk. It was not the Indian, it was the Iranian who moved from Iran. Because that's a topic I'm going to come back about it in another session and episode in the future.
Yeah, we'll talk about that again later.
Because the whole world, the thing started from India. I mean, first they start to talk about Japan, Japan. Then Bruce Lee.
Greece. First it's like all started from Greece, and then India.
They said Japan. Then the Bruce Lee came and started to kick ass of all the Japanese in the movie, and he started saying, no, it's a Kung Fu come from China. Then Bruce did
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
some
yeah.
say come from India, but the only country that no one talk about it is Iran.
And it's in the middle. It's in the
That's it.
middle
It's
between
the
all
beginning
these
of our
cultures. You know?
civilization. It's the start of
Yeah.
all human being. But they start to remove it, and they say they come from there, they come from here. And then no respect, no integration, no loyalty, which all the warriors, whether from China, from the Japan, when they talk about morality, is never forgetting your master. But all of these guys, they've forgotten the master. Maybe the Japanese guy knows it started from Iran, but why he never say that?
Yeah, well, I guess
Warrior?
these are all.
Yeah. Because why? Because if the say come from Iran, tourism attraction gonna fall down from Japan or China or all this country. Then they cannot anymore make money because for example, in Thailand, what is the most common income of Thailand? Come from where? From the Muay Thai, right? From the martial arts. I mean, they don't have any gas or gold or expensive resources like Iran. The only things they have is sport that they're promoting. And the beauty of the island and something else that everybody knows. I'm not going to talk about it. So, but majority people, yeah, they know Thailand because of the Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Talk about that again, Muay Thai has the history goes back to Iran. I'm going to talk about that later in different episodes. Because the name even they use as Arjan, they call their masters Arjan. Iranian name. I'm going to talk about that one day. But all of these countries, they're using the history as a tourist attraction. Such as Turkey or even India. So of course, if they're going to say started from Iran, nobody's going to go there. So they're going to lose all the money.
Yeah, look, obviously, I believe ultimately, I believe in humanity, and I believe that the human beings, regardless of their background, race, or tradition, are capable of extraordinary and beautiful things. So creativity is a human trait. And again, we're going to I guess spiritual or whatever, but and that is not exclusive to any culture. I really don't believe that it's not exclusive to any tradition. Creativity is exclusive to humanity. This is ultimately what I believe. But we are highlighting, I guess, the Persian or Iranian connection and the influences. That's what we are highlighting. And going back to, I guess, and you're raising very interesting, cool things that I've never heard of before, and I didn't know, and it sounds super fascinating. I can't wait to talk to you more about it and learn more from you as well. But this Javon Mardi, if we go back to talking about that, and I want to conclude by kind of explaining what that means to me, at least, and that is, how to be a young man, and what is the principles of a young man. A young man, the perfect young man, the ideal young man. I'm not that much of a young man anymore, but when I was a young man, you're idealistic, and this is the thing. You're passion driven. Being passion driven is a very big important component of this ethos that we're talking about, this moral code. To be passion driven, to be believing in what you're doing, and not take no for an answer. Just keep pushing, and this warrior mentality, and that forward. This is one of the three principles. Another one is to be really young at heart. This Javan Mard is young at heart. You can be Rostam in our mythology lives to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, but he always maintains, his I guess not childlike, but this youthful energy. This beautiful, as I grow older, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, this youthful energy is something so beautiful, and it's something so powerful that makes everything feels possible, makes everything feel accessible, and makes everything feel, in a way, eternal, because you think that you have all the time in the world, as youth. So again, this is an important part of the ethical, I guess we could say, spiritual aspect of it. And thirdly is to be compassionate, mehr. mehr parast, being compassionate, being kind, being generous, being chivalrous, being again, and that's why the Pahlavan, it doesn't serve a master compared to the samurai, as we've been doing those comparisons. As Pahlavan serves the land and the people of the land, and he is compassionate. He uses his compassion, he uses his strength, power, and skills for compassionate purpose. Okay,
exactly. Because this is a very. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you here because
no, go.
Is very important point that you pointed out, is because, guys, we know that the morality of the Pahlavanism, it doesn't conclude into few things. It's more than that. So some of the things that Dr. Kashi is mentioning, and after that I'm going to mention a few more, is that one of them, which was very important in the moral code, was for the people, not for the kings. Means you could never buy a Pahlavan with the money. You mentioned about that, and that was something I really wanted to talk about, this point, because unfortunately the people through the history, even until today and after us, that we're going to die, is going to happen. They use their powers. Someone know how to fight very well. Guy that he's good in fighting, in combat. It will be hired by the governors. Money, they can buy this man and tell him, go and do this, go and kill this person, go and oppress that person. So we see that in all the governments through the history until today. And then they might use the name of Pahlavan. They might say, oh, I'm a Pahlavan, I'm this, I'm that, and they put the tattoo, they cut themselves with the knife, to make the face more scary. They do it in our country. They get the blade, they cut themselves, they cut their hands, they put full tattoos from neck to head. Yeah, from neck to head, from neck to toes. So to kind of bring this fear, I'm a strong and I'm a Pahlavan. So young people, they have to understand that this is not the portrayal of a Pahlavan, because Pahlavan always is on the side of the Vic, and the Vic is the people. And you can never pay him to buy this character or this hero with the money and tell him, hey, I give you this, I give you these privileges, I give you this position, and go and oppress these people. This is the most important morality and the code of a Pahlavanism, which we don't see even in the samurai, which, as you mentioned very well. Because the shoguns could pay, hire a samurai, and use the samurai to eliminate his enemies or his opposite.
Yeah, look, I think we're talking about an ideal. We're talking about this ideal Pahlavan, or this ideal warrior, we're talking about that. The reality is, obviously, human nature is not black and white. The human nature is all this contrast in between. And I mean, we have in our tradition also, I need to highlight this, in very modern history even, Pahlavan Shaban Jafari, how he was bought. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, there are examples, and that's just human nature. Like, no, you can't really.
We don't call them Pahlavan. That's why I'm here to fight, to say in the next conversation in Farsi we're gonna have, to clarify this one, that this is not called Pahlavan, because we know at the time of Shah he was the same thing. He paid for Shaban Bimokh, and he used this guy to oppress his opposer. And after the revolution, the same game happened. They start to hire some guys. We call them Arazelobash. We don't call them Pahlavan.
No, look, I agree and I disagree, but let's come back to this in another chat about this. But yeah, and here's a very interesting example, and we'll come back to that. But to kind of conclude in regards to what is perceived to be the ideal, what is perceived to be ideal, as I understand it, the ideal Pahlavan is a Javan man, is this youthful man that is
so this Javan man,
passion driven, that is.
What kind of a codes he had to follow? Can you just name
that?
This Javan man? What kind of codes he had to follow? Can you name like few of them?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I have named a few of them, and I repeat them. It's like
I know that there are many warriors around the world, because every country they have a legends and warriors. But there's nothing specific within the Iranian warriors and compared to the rest of the world warriors. And the only thing that makes them differentiate was the Pahlavanism, which is the moral code, which we can see in Bushido, which I mentioned, in samurais. Yeah. So that's why samurais start to be more highlighted. This last few centuries because of the movie and media, only because of the moral codes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you.
So
And
now,
I guess I'm coming to this. I want to conclude by just like repeating these three very important principles of Jawan Mahdi, which is being passion driven. You know, we spoke about that. Being young at heart. You know, being this, maintaining this youthfulness, maintaining this youthful energy. And again, that goes, I mean, all of these are kind of umbrella terms that have under them, like it's like a tree, like it's a branch, like each of them will have like their own additional codes that you talk about, etc. But if I go back to recap this, is this being passion driven, young at heart, which leads ultimately to immortality, being immortal, continuously young at heart, and being compassionate, okay? But all of this, all of this, you can say, can exist in other traditions and does exist in other cultures
yeah,
and
because this
ways.
is very
What makes
common.
me,
Yeah, these are common.
well, I'm talking about what makes the Pahlavani unique is this word that I can't find a good English translation or equivalent, because I simply don't think that it exists in their culture, so they never had to kind of like express a word for it, and that is maram. Maram being, I think, the
Which the word in English, manner. They took it from that same word from Farsi word maram. It goes to English, become manner. It's the closest word.
Yeah, but there is this. Thank you for that. But there is this like special like quality of maram that is like this personal characteristic. You know, it is your mannerism, yes, but it's not mannerism or manner is kind of like very detached from the emotional, spiritual responsibilities that maram implies. You know, to have maram or you know, to express maram, you know, it's like I give you like an example like this. You know, you my friend, and I'm eating something. You know, I saved the last one for you because you're my friend. You know, I think about my friend. I think about and this is again goes back to mehr. You know, this compassion, having this kindness, having this love, you know, and this is again
To be
what I said.
selfless, we can say, not to be selfish. This is one of the traits of
Of course, but selflessness is obviously it's one aspect of it. It's one aspect of it. This maram is much bigger.
Yeah, of course,
you know,
maram is big. Is a big, yeah, is a root, and these are the
yeah,
fruits.
yeah.
Yeah.
So being selfless is one aspect of it, and this, I guess, like in English language, they have expressed it as chivalry, being chivalrous, you know, and there's certain codes of how to be chivalrous. But ultimately, from the Pahlavani tradition, I think the most significant differentiating factor is this maram.
Okay, man. I would summarize this morality code to support Dr. Kashi conversation about that the Pahlavan moral code. As he said, and as I know, and many people that know about it, is not concluded in few threads. Is a many. It's like there is a root and there is a branches, and there are more than 200, 300 fruits maybe. And each of these fruits is the threads of the Pahlavanism. Let's say one of the three most important, based on the research I had about the Jawan Mahdi, means being a young and being manner. A young manner. That's how I can say it in English word, because English is limited. We all know that. So we have no choice to find what we can to you know, to kind of give our direction. So that's the meaning of Jawan Mahdi. And the number one is a kharat in Farsi, or khe can be used by K, like Kurd, which is the Kurdish people. Even the name is there. That's why we say, oh, the Kurd people are very loyal people and they're smart guys, huh? So the kharat comes wisdom. So a Pahlavan have to be wise. One of the most important fruits I'm mentioning here. And Rosti, the righteousness, like we talk about, he have to be at the side of the weak people, not at the side of the, you know, the evil mans. And the third one is mardomi, means again be sociable with the mardom, with the people, with the nation, and be on the side of them. So these are the very three important Jamal Mardi, the young mannerism of the Pahlavanism. But I would like to mention one more thing, which was the bravery. And this bravery, again, is so different than the bravery of all the warriors I've been watching. Because when we talk about bravery, you will say, okay, all the Pahlavan, or let's say all the heroes around the world in different cultures, they are brave. If you're not brave, you can be I don't know, a Pahlavan or something. But there's something specific about them which goes back to Last Samurai movie, because I would love to talk about something about this movie which it bothered me so much.
Okay.
I have to say that, because not many people pay attention. So far, any people that have seen they watch this movie, they just, oh, I love this movie. Because what? Because Tom Cruise is playing the movie. So of course, 50 years.
Nothing against Tom Cruise. I think he's awesome.
That's it. 50 years Tom Cruise was invested, promoted that way to gather the people attention. Of course, any movie he play, you guys gonna love it because you would be his follower unconsciously. But I'm a very fearless man. You can't play around with people like us. So in the Last Samurai movie, the thing that you guys use in the Pahlavanism, we call it long, that red cloth. The sarong,
yeah.
Yeah, in English, is there a name for that?
Sarong in English.
Yeah, English. Which in the Southeast Asian culture, they start to use that a lot.
In
the Silat martial arts, they use the same sarong. So this sarong, in the Last Samurai movie, when Tom Cruise want to know who are the samurais, you open the book and he says, because when you said it's kind of impossible that people, they got influenced by each other, but it's possible. Or,
no, I didn't say it's impossible. I said it's very probable. It's very, very probable.
Okay, sure. So it might be a question, because I know with some people that discuss, I said, well, we all have a brain. If one person can think about one thing, so probably somewhere thousands of miles in different part of the earth, he can think the same thing. Possible, yeah, it's possible. Who can execute it is a matter of question. So now let's say in my self-defense system, I know my father has a very specific technique, like Apple. When Apple came and he started to use this technology, only Apple had it. So when my father started to create a Rostami system, his techniques are fingerprint. Nobody on this earth can tell me, let's say when he did the shoulder lock for the knife on his neck, purely it was his own technique. 6.6 billion people on the planet, none of them, they know this move. So we are talking about something very specific here, that only one man can achieve that knowledge, or one person can reach to that detailed, let's say, technique or knowledge. And when I start to perform some unique techniques in 21st century of my father, well, social media can manipulate you so easy. They say, okay, I want to give this much view to this guy, and I'm going to give view like millions to that guy. So a young guy come like 17 years old, it's still my technique, or it's still my dad technique, 21st century. And he go in front of the TikTok doing my move, which is only my move, because I created that move, and no one else didn't know this move. He's doing that move, that locking system, and he get thousands of views, thousands of comments, but no one doesn't know it comes from me. People, they think it comes from this kid. But we know the truth. So the same idea, the same pattern has been repeated for thousands of years through the history. Someone else creates something, another person come and steal it, and then they vanish this guy and they say, I made this. Why they do that? It's because of ego. That's something of course, Pahlavan fight against it, which is nafs. They call a Pahlavan cannot fight his own nafs. He's never a Pahlavan, which is his own self-ego. Because you just want to say, I. You is we, is not I. So in the Last Samurai, they're mentioning that when Tom Cruise reading the samurais, and then the guy said, what are you doing? I mean, this guy's, and then he said, I want to know about my enemy. I don't care who the hell they are. That's what Tom Cruise said. And then he said they are more advanced and civilized than the Iranian. In the movie it mentioned that they were that they were using a sarong. These guys, they were scared. They were more civilized than the Iranian who were using sarong, the long. Yeah. So that's one point, that they were attacking to Iranian culture in the movie. Then it continues. Then it goes to the second stage, that when Tom Cruise want to fight with the enemy, that he become a samurai, and the Katsumoto tell him, our enemy is very, our guru is very small, but our enemy is so big. So let's say you have a few hundred samurais, but there are thousands and thousands. Then he said, yeah, it's the same thing happened between the Greek and the Persian, that the Greek had 300 Spartans, but they fought great against millions of Persians. Again, they start to condemn the Iranian in the movie. So I found a lot of things in that movie that they're only fingering the Iranian eyes, poking the Iranian eyes.
It's not only that movie. It's not only that movie.
I know. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. That's my plan. I want to go through each of these movies. I want to reveal all this idea behind that why this is happening.
Yeah.
So, but Last Samurai is a different game. It's not a 300 movie. It's a very well-made quality movie. Well, Tom Cruise is in the movie, and good directors are behind that, right? But what is the purpose of doing this? Why they keep poking the Iranian eyes? They're condemning the Iranian. Then they give the characteristic of Iranian to Japanese, and then they promote the Japan, but not the Iran. Okay, one day I will go back to that topic, but I want to mention here about the mannerism. I start to research and I figure out that movie was made based on the war between the Shah Ismail and the Ottoman Empire. Is famous as Chaldoran, Jang Chaldoran War. This is very funny. That everything happened in the movie was the story of Shah Ismail. Totally is a fake story. Totally is a made-up game. They just change it. They start to make Iranian like uncivilized, and they start to make the other group more civilized. And then in the real history, if people will go and research, they will see the same story that Shah Ismail was go through it. It just they changed the name and everything. They made it Katsumoto in the name of Japan. And in that war, that when Shah Ismail was fighting with his enemy, that we see it in the Katsumoto movie, that he go with few warriors with the horse into the machine gun and the artillery of his enemy with the cold weapon against the warm weapon. That was the idea and the story of Shah Ismail. Shah Ismail was a great Pahlavani. I read about him a lot. He was one of the Pahlavani that I'm talking about, the bravery here, that make that movie so impressive. The history of movies, The Last Samurai, it was because of they took it and they stole it from the Shah Ismail, the real figure of Iranian Pahlavani and king, because of bravery, unique bravery that the Pahlavani they had, which was this, that my enemy come with the machine guns, artillery, exactly like Last Samurai. But my Pahlavanism and mannerism of Pahlavan say, this is not a manly fight. You're chicken. You guys are weak. And I'm gonna kill you with my cold weapon.
Yeah.
And they do this one, exactly like Last Samurai movie, which is a made-up one, a fake story.
Yeah, look, I mean, I like the story, and you have very interesting points. But this history, as we know, repeats itself. History repeats itself, and just the reason why I had to migrate from Iran was the Iran-Iraq War, and this same mannerism was repeated then, not so long ago. It's not like hundreds of years ago.
That's exactly
a couple of decades ago.
Yeah. That's what I want to mention about what you said. I want to say in the whole history of Iran, we see this mannerism, which I will go back to Iran and Iraq war again. So Shah Ismail, he do the same thing, and he said these guys are with the artillery. That's fine. Their numbers outnumber our numbers. Shah Ismail force was less than 20,000, and the Ottoman forces there were more than 120,000 soldiers. So look at the big gap, and exactly they make it up in the Last Samurai movie the same way. And then they say Iranian are uncivilized, Iranian are cowards. And then in the Chaldoran war with 20,000 soldiers against 120,000 soldiers with the artillery and the guns, and Iranian go with the arrow and the sword. And there was one battle that these guys, they put all their artillery and all their men in the flat land, exactly the last scene of Last Samurai. I don't understand how come they're so close. When I read that war, that Chaldoran war of Shah Ismail, I only see the frame of the Last Samurai, every frame. So that they set up the artillery, and then the guns and everything, and then Shah Ismail is behind the mountain, and he says, well, we want to bring the war behind the mountain because they only have sword. If you go to the open land and the flat land, they're gonna, they're gonna put holes through all of your fleshes and your bone. So he wanted to bring the Osmani and the Ottoman guys behind the mountain so they could slash them with the sword. So what he said, that's what I'm talking about. The specific bravery of Iranian legends and the Pahlavanism is totally different than all the warriors around the world. He said, this is not manly. We stay behind the mountain. We're going to go to the flat ground and face to face cross them. And exactly that's the last thing of the Katsumoto. That he's running on the horse and they are, going with the machine guns and, with, throwing the balls and the explosion and he reaching them. And Shah Ismail would do that. And he'd go like straight direct to these men and slash them with the sword and everything. Yeah. So this is something I wanted people to know about the last Samurai movie, that how tricky they start to upside down the game with billions of money behind that, just to say Iranian are cowards, Iranian are weak, but some other people are more stronger than them. I had to say that. It's my duty because.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think the last thing I want to say is that you said, you made the comment, and I've personally I've experienced that too. That someone will come and copy, and I mean you get that, and that's the nature of it, especially these days with interconnectivity and social media, and of course copying parts of the culture, tradition, heritage, moves, whatever it is, right?
No, because it's an open world. Everyone is still from somebody. You take it from you, take
of course, and everyone wants to be famous.
Doctor, you study in the university. There is something called plagiarism. That's what they teach. Okay, if I want to say in a moral way, no, it's fine. You can take it from everywhere and don't call who made it, who was the master of this knowledge. Yeah, we can say that. But why, when we are studying in the university, all lectures always tell us, when you bring a material and you want to present it, you have to say, where did you take it? And if you don't say that, it will be considered a plagiarism, copyright, right? So now they talk about the copyright. Oh, if you do this, you take it from here.
No, I get it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? They have done that to our country for thousands of years. They took everything from us, stole it from us, and then they start to tell us you're this, you're that, and blah, blah. So sometimes, you have to say, because if me doesn't say that.
No, I agree with you. You got to call it out. And I have done that. I call out people that like that as well. Like, I mean, that's a different thing. But I guess what I want to conclude with and say is that don't be disheartened. I try not to be disheartened myself, because sometimes it is disheartening. But, because I have found in my experience that true seekers, they will come to the original source. True seekers will find what is the truth, and that's all that needs to be said, because I rather deal with authentic, original people, and authentic, original people that appreciate authenticity and appreciate something that is, true and original, than dealing with those copycats. They will get forgotten anyway.
Man, I'm going to say this line, maybe you help me to translate it in English. It's from one of the Persian famous poet, that he said, هر کسی کو دور ماند از اصل خویش باز جوید روزگار وصل خویش.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I don't think I
say the truth and the secret will come back to his origin. That's what
that's it, man. You said it.
Persian poet was trying to say, that هر کسی کو دور ماند از اصل خویش باز جوید روزگار وصل خویش. I don't know how can I translate that in English, but
I think you did a good job. Like, when you will pass through mountains, but ultimately you will come back to your own authentic, original self.
And your origin of yourself. Thank you so much, Dr. Kashi. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking with you.
Absolutely lovely.
I really, because to finalize, I know it takes a lot of time, but because we want people to know what the truth is all about. My all concern in this life was the truth, which is Rosti. That's the something Persian fought for it. And that's what I fight for it. I don't care what's going to happen in the future. What I care is the righteousness. And that's the same thing Persian they taught the children for thousands of years. And when I see this man, Dr. Kashi, I see the righteousness in you, because I see a man somewhere far away in a different country, in different culture, because I did the same thing when I was 16 years old. I go to Malaysia, Southeast Asia, and I start to do the same thing, battling, introducing the culture and everything as a young kid. So I see another man is doing the same thing, and it gives me a great, great energy to see that there are people who are doing this. So I decided to invite him to our channel, so that people, they can, know him, that what he's doing and what is his purpose, because we all have one purpose in this life. I mean, two purpose. One, they want to do crazy stuff, and one, they want to do good stuff. But
that's the duality. Yeah?
the duality. That's what Ahriman and the Ahura Mazda was, and that's what I
Yeah,
wanted to
exactly.
say. That in the Zoroastrianism, they believe the whole world was unity, like Yuga, Yek. So this means that the Yuga
Yeah.
and Pahlavani goes back, up to thousands and thousands of years, very ancient, because we see it in Zoroastrianism philosophy that they believe the world was one until the Ahriman come and the world become duality. So I love to see the people that they're doing the good things, and I see that in Dr. Kashi. So I really enjoy what he's doing. I wish him all the best with all power and strength to continue this heritage of our ancestors and our fathers and our mothers. I want to say father and mother because we know when you say father, the mothers want to be upset. Oh, how about us? So all this two energy that was this creation, so that hopefully we can serve the mankind. And when we talk about Iran, I hope people understand.
Humankind.
That's it. And when I talk about Iran, I hope people understand. Do not call us fascists. Do not call us nationalists. Do not call us these nonsense labels. I'm talking about the country, not me, before me. Great, great, great philosophers, historians, scholars. Talk about that. Like one of them, Richard Fry. Richard Fry was one of the American scholars. When he went back to Iran and for decades and decades he done history research, you know what he said in the end? He said, bury me in the Isfahan, in the land of Iran. I want to be buried here. A man from that side of the world, America, travel all the way to Middle East. What does he discover? That he tell me when I die, you bury me in this land. It's not
I mean,
so don't call me
the examples of...
don't call me fascist. I'm saying to those people, don't call me,
nationalist
or all those crap. I'm talking about the truth. All of you guys were living in the middle of this land, and you were all one family. Over the time, you start to travel all around, and then a lot of separation happened. So our job is to become united again, and that's why we have to go back to the beginning, and that was the beginning. You want to accept it, you don't want to accept it, that's your problem. I'm telling you right now, or you can go and do your research. Anyway, Doctor, if you want to say your last words, I will be happy to.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think I just conclude with in the word of Hegel, the German philosopher and historian. He said that the Iranians were the original historical people. This is his words, not mine. And as you said, this is not about nationalism. This is not about fascism or anything like that. It's just about highlighting the Persian version, as I call it. And you said the unification and coming back to Persian yoga.
That's it. Because when I talk about that poem I give you, you will go back to your origin, that the Persian poet said that.
Yes, exactly.
I read that. It happened to me. I left my country like you when I was young. I went all around the countries, and then in the end, I get back to my origin, that which was there, not my origin, the origin of the humankind. So that country belongs to everybody. It belongs to Turkish, it belongs to Egyptian, it belongs to Greek, it belongs to Indian, it belongs to all.
Heritage of humankind. Yeah, heritage of humankind.
It's the home of everybody. It's not like because I come from the land, I'm trying to say, oh, you know what? Iran is like that. No. I don't buy these craps. I don't buy, because I'm a very wise man. I travel more than you. You might be 50 years old sitting in your city or in your village, and you haven't traveled in one country. But when I was 16 years old, I traveled more than 20 countries. So I've seen different culture, different things. But people in our country, they're sitting in the village and they're talking about, how can you say that Iran is like this? Our own people from our own country. They don't know it.
Yeah, well, you get that. But again, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge with me. It was really beautiful having this conversation with you. I look forward to our next conversation in Farsi. That will be challenging for me, but it will be interesting. So, yeah. So thank you again, Sapasguzaram. Thank you so much for everyone that was looking at us and listening to us. So thank you for you guys' time as well. And I'll stay in touch with you. Again, Durud, Bedrud, and be tireless with what you're doing. I love your work, man.
Same thing. I love what you're doing too, and I wish you all the best, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Sure. Take care of yourself. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.